Hello, I'm Martha Roberts. I'm here today with my mom, Trish, her best friend, Laverne, and I'll be interviewing them about what it was like growing up in the early 50s. So we'll start today by asking Miss Laverne about growing up in the community, what it was like, if she saw segregation and that kind of thing. So, do you remember segregation?
No, we didn't have, we was desegregated. Um, I don't remember anything about that.
Okay.
Didn't have in schools or,
Okay, so there was segregation, right? You didn't have any
No.
people of color
no.
in the school. Okay, so
And the
so it
first,
was segregation.
first time I had any dealings with that is at work. And we desegregated where I worked. And everybody was in a turmoil about it. But I met some real nice girls and I'm friends with them today.
Mhm. So when you met these girls at work, that was the first time you actually come into contact
uh-huh.
with people of color. Okay, did you get to know them or?
Oh, yes. And
Yes.
real good friends.
Became friends. Okay, one of them used to bake for you, I think, or
Yes,
make these?
her mother baked cakes and pies for me. And some people there said, I wouldn't eat that. That's fine. You don't eat it. But I loved it and I'm friends with her today.
Mm-hmm. And you was telling me earlier that you met her in town one day, not too long ago?
She and her mother came in the store where I worked. And her mother, she said, this is Laverne. I want you to meet Laverne. And she said, my daughter had talked a lot about you when y'all started working together.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And that really touched me.
Right, right. I'm sure it was. What about you, Mama? Do you remember segregation where you lived?
No. There was a black section and a white section, and we were separated at all times. Never went to school. Any blacks or any Asian people. It was just
It was an all-white community with white schools. I mean, white.
right.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Another thing, Martha, when they desegregated our workplace, they had black bathrooms and white bathrooms. And the day they came in, that was eliminated. Everybody shared a bathroom.
Mm-hmm. Did that go over very well?
Not with a lot of them that didn't. But,
But we've come a long way.
oh yes, oh yes.
Yes, we have. Okay, another thing that I wanted to ask is foods. You know, in the mid-50s, early 60s, things were a lot different than they are today. So what type and how, or more specifically, how did you get food?
Well, Martha, I was a daughter of a sharecropper. We were poor. And my mother had her garden, and she canned all summer for a family of 10 children. And that's where we got our food. I didn't know anything else.
And how'd you get your meats?
We had killings for the hogs and cows, and at a smokehouse we put and hung it from it. And when they killed hog, we made lard. So I didn't know what it was like to go to town and buy groceries. I'm sure my mother did have to buy some things, but
And what about processed foods, Mama? Do you remember processed foods in the grocery stores like hamburger helper and
Not
things
at
like
that time. We never. I don't remember. As far back as I can remember, I don't remember having hamburger helper or tuna, or I don't remember having cornflakes for years.
And I bet when cakes were made back in those days, it wasn't a box cake.
honey, we didn't know what light bread was.
Uh-huh,
Just biscuits.
yes. And
It's-
cakes were homemade, weren't they?
Right.
With flour,
Right.
not the box flours that you get today.
Right.
Okay, what about schools? What kind of school environment were you in, Miss Laverne, when you were in school? Do you remember? It was segregated also, right?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so there was only white students in
That's
your
right.
class? Yeah.
That's all.
And what about learning? What type of learning did your teacher present to y'all? Did y'all do things like group learning,
Oh, no.
hands-on learning?
Uh-uh.
So it was
Teacher got up and talked. She would do some writing on the chalkboard. You got it or you didn't get it. That was up to you. But with nothing like that.
Y'all had books. That was
Yeah, oh,
it?
when we had books, uh-huh.
No overhead
No,
projectors.
no. Didn't know. That was before all that technology came out.
Speaking of technology, what kind of technology do you do today? What are some of the things you do?
Oh, well, I'm on my computer. I was an office manager, and I do all my work on the computers and love Facebook.
Facebook.
And
Okay.
so-
You text.
text, got
Okay.
a cell phone. Thank goodness for cell phones.
Yes. So, Mama, you have a cell phone too?
Yes, I do, and I text quite often to my children and grandchildren. I know.
Pictures? Do y'all take pictures on your cell phone and
Oh,
get
yeah.
pictures? Okay. Getting back to school, Ms. Laverne, you said that the teacher, when she was teaching in the classroom, she was just a basic chalkboard person. She did not have technology in the classroom. There wasn't much technology back then to have.
Uh-huh.
And also, we mentioned the books. Did y'all get to take your books home?
Yep.
You were allowed to take your books home and just write them back. How many grade levels did y'all have when you were in school? Was
7.
it
Was first 7.
first or
Then
seventh?
from the 8th to 12th.
Was high school?
Just
school.
grade school and then high school.
All right. So what about, can you tell me, Miss Laverne, something significant that happened in your lifetime that you can really remember?
The most important thing and the most fascinating thing that happened is when Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. I mean, in my neighborhood and everything, we thought it's not real. That's not real. That didn't take place. But that was the most fascinating thing that happened to me.
So you remember?
Then the TV and the microwave.
Microwaves or godsend. What about you, Mama? What's something that you remember?
I remember John F. Kennedy getting killed the day off. He got killed. Everybody was just walking around in shock. He was a good president, and it really bothered people a lot.
I know when that happened, when I was working, they completely shut off everything and came over the speaker and announced it. And we had 10 seconds, I think, or 30 seconds of silent prayer because everybody was devastated with that.
It's kind of like I think that I'll be sitting here one day, probably 20 years from now, hopefully, talking with my grandchildren about something of importance that I can remember, and I'll never forget the day that the bombing happened in the trade centers in New York. See, that's something that I think that I'll talk about in the future.
Can I tell you what the fun thing about I remember?
Yes, ma'am.
Elvis Presley.
Oh, yes.
He was my idol.
It was your idol. Yours and how many others? Yes. And how did your family respond to Elvis? As far, he was a shaker.
Yep. But my boys thought I was crazy.
Mhm.
And the day he died, I turned my stereo wide open. And when they came on in, they started turning it down. I said, don't you touch it, don't you touch it. I mean, I grieved over that.
What did your mama, when you were young, what did your mama think about you, or your dad think about you liking Elvis Presley?
Well, I don't really have no reaction from that.
Okay.
The most reaction I got from my daddy about anything is when I went over there one day and had shorts on. He could not believe that I had shorts on. So,
And that's another thing, isn't it, that when we think about where we were and where we've come and the difference that we've made in society. Well, this is about the time we're going to wrap this up. I want to thank my mom. I want to thank Miss Laverne for agreeing to do my little interview
well, thank
today.
you for having us.
Thank you. And I want to thank my sister-in-law Jackie for video for us. Thank you. And as the famous cartoon character says, that's all, folks.